Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Bruce Tatters, CEO of Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Blue Thunder Mining Incorporated, a gold exploration story with a substantial land package in the Chibougamau region of Quebec and is surrounded by several multi-million ounce deposits. Today, I have two members of the executive team, Chad Williams, Executive Chairman, and Rob Sinnott, CEO, who will provide an update to investors on their plans for 2020. After a formal presentation, we will take questions live. Please send us your questions via chat and we'll get to as many as we can. You can type in your questions into the chat box at any time. To start, we'll handle this disclosures and then get right into it. For Blue Thunder, there may be some forward-looking statements on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on the second page of the corporate presentation you're about to see. For Red Cloud Securities, I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we do note that the call will not take into account particular situational needs of investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see the most recent research or information on our website for Blue Thunder for any specific disclosures. So now I'm going to turn it over to Chad and Rob to begin. Gentlemen.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce. And a big thank you to Red Cloud for the opportunity to present Blue Thunder. My name's Chad Williams. I'm the founder of Blue Thunder. And in a moment, you'll hear about our very large land package just south of Chibougamau that hosts many important exploration targets. So we think that Blue Thunder is a very, very interesting investment opportunity. It is my pleasure to introduce Rob Sinnott. Rob just joined Blue Thunder as our new CEO. Rob has a very illustrious track record in the discovery of mineral deposits. And he'll walk you through the geology and the mineral upside, if you will, on our properties. Rob, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Chad, and thanks, Bruce, and thanks to the Red Cloud Group for hosting this event. So let's just jump right into the presentation here. As Bruce mentioned, there are some forward-looking statements that will be made today, so please download our presentation and review these later. So just to start off, we have a potential game changer here, we believe, in this area with the location of where we are. We're next door to some recent discoveries made on adjacent land, the Nelligan and Monster Lake deposit. We have all the right ingredients, we believe, to move this forward and make some mineral discoveries. So some of the highlights I'm going to be talking about today. One recent event that was just released today, we are initiating our phase 1 field program, which we announced in a press release today. We're pretty excited about this, and crews will be mobilized shortly. And I'll be getting into the details of that program a little bit later. And our intention is to eventually move that into a drill program later on. We have, as Chad mentioned, a really large exploration property. It's comprised of 5 separate properties that together comprise the MUUS project. It's 51,000 hectares, and we're the largest landholder in the area. And it's pretty much a geological hotspot now. There's been a lot of staking, consolidation, land acquisitions, and corporate M&A in this district. And this is all on the heels of the recent gold discoveries at the nearby Nelligan and Monster Lake deposits. And of course, Quebec is just a great place to be, a fantastic jurisdiction to work in.
Agreed.
So just quickly on the corporate share structure here, we have about 57 million shares outstanding, 5 million options, 5 million warrants, so fully diluted about 66 million. And our last cash position at the pro forma at the close of the RTO was about 0.8 million. Some of our biggest shareholders, of course, Red Cloud is a large shareholder. Board and management hold 9.5%. O3 Mining, which came in due to our acquisition of the Fancamp property. I'll get into that in a minute. Holds about 8%, and then Delbrook, Plethora are significant shareholders as well. So I'm just going to start off with where we are. I think I can put this white board on. So these are the 5 properties I was talking about: the MUUS, Fancamp, MUUS East, Nisk, and Embry, and we are in what we call the Chibougamau Gold District, very close and on trend with a lot of historical deposits and some new discoveries that have been made, including Nelligan, which I'll circle right there, and of course Monster Lake, which is right here. Let me just clear those. So once again, the property is underlain by these structural faults, which we call the Gerscherville Deformation Zone. Let me just highlight that. And the Fancamp Deformation Zone. And these faults are host to a lot of the mineralization in the deposit, in the district. And the important thing is that this trend of deformation zones comes right through the heart of our property. And along with that, a lot of the host lithologies, which are known to be associated with mineralization in the area. So these are really exciting points for us moving forward. So just quickly, a little bit about the Nelligan deposit. It was announced last year by IM Gold in joint venture with Vanstar. It has an inferred resource of about 97 million tons, grading about 1 gram, which is a 3.2 million ounce resource. That's a very significant resource and something that really opened up exploration and staking in the district. Now, the interesting thing is Nelligan is not typical of the Abitibi. It's gold that's sediment hosted in ductile deformed rocks, and it's associated, as I mentioned, with the Gerscherville Deformation Zone. So that package of sediments with the deformation zone trends right across our property. So we feel we have some excellent ground that we'd like to start exploring and look for a similar sort of deposit as Nelligan on our ground. So the MUUS project has been held since 2017. There's been an awful lot of historical work on it that we've compiled recently. The vast majority of the work was done in the 50s to 1980s. Our recently acquired Fancamp property was drilled up until the 1990s, and the Nisk and MUUS East properties are pretty much unexplored. So in total on all of the property, there is about 343 core holes, but these are very shallow, wide space, and any anomalous results were generally not followed up since the work was done a long time ago, and at the time the gold price was probably in the $200, $300, $400, maybe $500 per ounce range. Today at $1,700, it's a different story. There's also been a fair amount of till sampling, airborne geophysics, ground geophysics, mapping and trenching, and we've been compiling all of this information to make it into a more usable format. What has Blue Thunder done? Certainly one of the main things we've worked on is acquiring through staking and low-cost option agreements, increasing our ground position from 12,000 hectares when Chad first started the company back in 2017 to over 51,000 hectares now. So we have a tremendous amount of high priority, very prospective ground that we are starting to work with. We've done some aeromag work in the past and some regional prospecting and sampling. But as I mentioned earlier, starting with our ground exploration program, we will be moving ahead to do some more work here very soon. Just looking at some of the historical work over the MUUS block or the MUUS property, you can see these these deformation zones that come through. There's one, that's the Fancamp, and here is the Gersterville deformation zone. And where they come together, we have a lot of historical work that was done, till sampling, and basically it shows up a lot of very interesting anomalies in the interface between the bedrock and the till. And you can see some of these grades here, but more importantly would be the size of the gold grains and tracing these to find where the source is. So these are 3 target areas that we're pretty excited about and we'll be targeting in this next phase of exploration. This is a compilation of all of the mag work, the airborne mag work that's been done on the property. Once again, we highlight the deformation zones coming through the property, and you can, if you look closely, you can see an association with these deformation zones and the magnetic response. We're using this as a key targeting tool, and we'll be applying this as we move forward in the exploration program.
Hey, Rob, just before you go on, let's go back to that slide. I think it's important to point out, and I'm going to draw on here, the yellow squares show existing gold deposits. For the listeners that may be less familiar with this area, this is an area that has a mining history. There were many mines here at one time, and there are many gold and other types of deposits. There are actually base metal deposits, iron ore deposits. The point I'm trying to make is look at the square, the yellow squares, Monster Lake, Philibert, okay? So I'm going to highlight them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 known gold deposits, and we surround them all. And again, to underline Rob's point, our properties are also on these main structures. For example, if you look at the MUUS East property, our MUUS East property at the top right corner, and the NISC property, which is also our property, you can see that there is, with the geophysics, you can see there's a northeast-southwest structure. Now, a lot of those are dikes and areas of lesser interest, but it does give you the fabric of the geology. And, you know, you can see that the fabric of the geology crosses through Philibert. Here, I'm going to draw a line because I can do that here, but you can see it goes right through Philibert, right through Nelligan, down to NISC, okay? And then, of course, if I draw a line through Joman, Meston, and Philibert, it goes through our property this way. So you can see there's a nice northeast-southwest structure and a nice east-west structure. And by the way, these structures go for many, many dozens of kilometers. In fact, you can trace, I think, the one of them, the northeast-southwest structure, over hundreds of kilometers. So these are major, major, major structures. And again, for folks that are perhaps less familiar with geology, the gold doesn't come from the sky, obviously. It comes from a deep underground, and it's these structures, these broken, you know, structures, if you will, broken rock that allow the fluids to come up. And that's why this location is of very high importance, and that's why we're very enthusiastic about our potential and upside. So, Rob, I'll stop talking and I'll back to you, sir.
Thanks, thanks, Chad. That's some really good points there to take away from this. So just moving on to the next slide. This basically highlights some of the historical work that's been done on the property. And my point earlier was that a lot of people have been poking holes in this for a while, but perhaps walking away from grades that today we would find very, very interesting. And this is a selection of some historical either surface trench samples or drill holes. But you can see there's a fair amount of 1, 2, 3, 4 gram per ton gold samples that have never really been followed up. So it's added fuel for us to get out there, start compiling this information, putting boots on the ground and following up on some of these great targets. And you'll also notice a lot of these are directly associated with the Gerscherville deformation zone, as Chad has just been pointing out. So looking at what we're going to do and what we're going to focus on, we've identified 3 main target areas. So the first is what we call the Fancamp zone. The second is this trend of the Gerscherville deformation zone as it extends to the west from the Nelligan deposit. And the third one is this area where 2 main deformation zones come together. There's a lot of smoke in this area, and we believe there's high potential to find something there.
And there's the green areas as well, which are of secondary importance, but you never know, you know, what those will contain or hold, right? We'll get to those eventually.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we remember we have 51,000 hectares here. This is a large property covering a lot of really interesting strike potential. So we have to highlight the main ones, and we'll get to them all as we can. So this
sorry, Rob, to interrupt, but again, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into prioritizing these targets. There are something like 948 technical reports that have been filed on all of our property. And we've done a lot of digitizing and processing. So there's a lot of science that, you know, we're not just pointing to something on a map. Yeah, there's geophysics and geochem and all kinds of different tools that we use. So there's a lot of science behind it. Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
Thanks, Chad. This slide just sort of highlights what I just talked about on the map, the 3 priority areas that we're going to be targeting on this next phase. And, you know, we'll be doing a program of mechanical stripping, geological mapping, sampling, and prospecting, taking all of that information and generating some drill targets that we'll hopefully move into a phase 2 of exploration after phase 1 is completed. So looking at target area 1, this is the Fancamp property that we acquired from O3 Mining just a few months ago. This is a really exciting target. Basically, it has 5, let me just get my pen on here, 5 target areas here called A, B, D, E, and over here we have C. These have historical drill results on it, and in general, they range between perhaps 4 and 20 grams per ton over widths from less than a meter to upwards of 6 meters. The gold tends to be structurally controlled, and we're starting to figure out where these zones are now. They seem to be related with folds, and they form as plunging mineralized zones. These are the zones that we're identifying now. This has only been drilled to very shallow depth. Generally, a lot of holes are less than 50 meters vertical. There's a few that are down to 100 meters vertical, but it is wide open at depth. It's wide open along strike, and between the various zones, very little work has been done. So we feel there's great potential here, and this will be the first area that we're going to target. So a lot of the drilling, once again, was done prior to the 1990s. It was also done using very narrow diameter core. And when you're talking nuggety gold exploration, you like to have as big a sample as possible. So when we do drill, we want to use much larger diameter core to get a more representative sample and to reduce the nugget effect of gold. There's also been a lot of surface trenching that was done after the drilling, where they started to understand better the structural controls here. And I'll just show you here, basically, at the A zone, we're talking on surface 12 meters of 10 grams, 6 meters of 45 grams, and 11 meters of 6.5 grams. And at the B zone, 8 meters of 9 grams and 1.5 meters of 15 grams. Now we have to get on, the snow is just starting to melt in the area, but as soon as we can actually safely get onto site, we will be verifying these historical results and following up on this and tracing these zones, doing some more trenching to come up with what we believe is the best potential for a drill program moving forward. This just zeroes in on the A and B zone at Fancamp, and I'm showing the historical drill results, and the collar is coded with a range of grades. So you can see there's an awful lot that are 3 to 5 grams, 5 to 10 grams, 10 to 15 grams, and some even greater than that, at 15 to 71 grams. And like I mentioned earlier, there are plunging mineralized zones that are forming at both of these targets, and this is what we intend to follow at depth with drilling after phase 1 is completed. So this next slide just looks at the two next highest priority zones. One of them being what we call the Nelligan Trend, and that's that package of sediments underlain by the Gerscherville Deformation Zone. There's a large syncline axis called the Druy syncline, which also follows that trend. And this is the same package as is at Nelligan. And we will be following that, looking at some of these historical till sample results on our property. And the other key area will be right here, as I mentioned earlier. We have what I've called the Monster Lake Fancamp trend heading down here, and the Philibert Joe Man trend. So there's a lot of coinciding structures here. These are thought to be plumbing systems for gold deposits in the area. And the more of these plumbing systems you have in one location, the better chance you have of finding a potential gold deposit.
Before you go on, Rob, let's talk about this area here, and this area is one of the key reasons we acquired these claims 3 years ago. These are gram or multi-gram surface till or soil or surface samples. And recall the earlier slide that Rob showed that the Nelligan deposit, which is here, right down there where my arrow is pointing, that's 3 million ounces to 100 million tons, containing 3 million ounces at about a gram. And Rob mentioned that in the olden days when people were prospecting here, a gram was not important. But because the gold price is higher, because mining techniques have changed, a gram is now of high interest. So we have one or multi-gram anomalies right at surface over an area. This area here is 4 kilometers long. Now, some geologists believe that, first of all, we know that this area was glaciated. So the glaciers moved a lot of the material around. And many geologists think that this area, that these values were remobilized. In fact, the view is that this is not indicative of this particular area. In other words, these gold values come from somewhere else. We just don't know. But to me, it's too coincidental, and I'm not the only one. There are many people that think that, for example, Paulo Lestrito, our board members, thinks that it's too coincidental that these gold values are right on this trend, on this major structure here. And they line up very well. In fact, they're right on the contact between 2 different rock types. So that's one of the things we're going to test this year, this thesis that these values are either in place or remobilized. We just don't know. We haven't had the opportunity to get in here yet. But I can tell you personally, this is an area of very, very high importance. Somebody a little while ago mentioned when we first staked these claims, he said that these grades are high enough to mine them. I mean, if they turn out to be in situ, in other words, not remobilized, we can mine these grades. Anyway, there's a lot of work that has to be done, and time will tell. But it's to me very, very interesting.
All right. Yeah. So
To be clear,
I think we just have basically one more slide, and this just summarizes what we're going to do coming up here. We've announced our phase 1 program. We're starting to mobilize, getting our team sorted and everything right now. We'll complete more prospecting, more sampling, trenching over the prioritized areas that I've talked about today, and move into a phase 2 down the road. And we're still looking at artificial intelligence as a possible tool to help zero in and target some areas of potential interest, and we'll do more geophysics and diamond drilling of the best targets in our proposed phase 2. And of course, we're always looking to add to the property, do new acquisitions, and look at M&A opportunities. So, the next few slides really just go through our management team and the board, and so that's basically the presentation that I have for you today.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And of course, this presentation is on our website. There will be a replay of this webinar on the website as well. And in terms of concluding comments, Blue Thunder is a very simple story. We control 100% of 100,000 acres, and those acres are located just south of Chibougamau. The location, if there's one concept that I'd like you to take away as a potential, or as an existing investor, or a potential new investor, is that location is it's the key word, it's the key concept, key message: location, location, location. So why is location important? First of all, Quebec is always ranked year in and year out as one of the best jurisdictions in the world to find mineral deposits. The geology is good. The government support is fantastic. There's a mining culture in Quebec. In terms of our particular location, we have easy road access. We can get in any day of the year. To Rob's point, there are some times it's better than others. For example, right now it's the spring breakup, so it's not the best time. But the point is, if we wanted to, we could get in there. Tons of road access, government support, and the geology. Time will tell whether our properties host economic mineral deposits, but we're going to be spending money wisely, efficiently, with a lot of scientific backup. And Rob mentioned a few things like AI and big data, and obviously boots on the ground and traditional geology and geophysics. You've seen some of our geophysics maps. So we're throwing a lot of science at it, and we'll be generating, hopefully, a lot of news in 2020. So we welcome new investors to join us on our journey, and we thank the bottom of our heart existing investors that have allowed us to be where we are today. So I'll turn it over to Bruce. Bruce, if there's any questions, either from yourself or from people online, Rob and I would be pleased to answer those questions.
Terrific. One of the ones I want to get to first, because it was asked when you were going over the Fancamp pages, there was a specific question if you could identify the actual trenches in the Fancamp area where you're looking to follow up on.
Yeah, let me try to go back to that slide. So there's probably about 5 or 6 key trenches, and I don't have them on this map, but we will be updating our presentation and showing these in more detail. But they are basically scattered between this area and this area, and there's some other trenches along the trend, but the main ones that we're excited about and the ones that I've referred to in the presentation with those grades are focused in those 2 areas. Like I said, we'll update the presentation and show the locations of those in future days.
Terrific.
What is an interesting observation here, which may not be so obvious to a lot of people, but if you look at the if you look at the orientation of the holes in Zone B, they're oriented this way, and normally holes are drilled to be perpendicular to a mineralized zone. So they thought that the zone would be oriented. Whoops, sorry, I didn't draw that properly. Oriented this. Let's erase that. Let's clear. Start over again. They probably thought that the zone would be oriented sort of this way. There we go. But if you look down here, they thought the zone would be oriented this way. So it's pretty clear to me, by the way, there's an adit in this area too. It's pretty clear to me that they didn't really understand the geometry of the mineralization. So that's one of the things that we'll test. Yeah, they had good results. Yeah, they had good drill results, good trench results, but they weren't really sure of the orientation of the gold mineralization. So we're going to try to figure that out.
The other key thing I'm going to point out here, let me just clear those, is this is underlain by a magnetic survey. And you can see the general trend of the mag high is along here, but within that, you can see it sort of stepped in this direction like this. And what the early interpretations are showing us is that this is indicative of some folds that come through here, and gold in the Abitibi often really likes the folded scenarios because there's areas of dilation where the gold can be concentrated in these fold limbs, and this can create plunges where the mineralization goes down at a certain angle at depth. And this is what we're really focusing on. We have structural people looking at this and identifying where these potential plunges or plunging zones might occur as drill targets. So this is pretty exciting information, and this has never been followed up by drilling. This magnetic survey was done after the last drilling was done at this property.
Terrific, guys. So the next question refers back to your MUUS property. And the question is, you mentioned sediment-hosted gold and structurally controlled gold. Can you please elaborate on that? Does it mean gold is both strata and fault fracture controlled?
Yeah, a good question. Let me go back to...
That's pretty impressive geology there, Bruce.
Not bad. I wish it was me asking it.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up the Nelligan slide, which is basically our comparable. And it's not just a, how should I say, it's not just a disseminated deposit where it's randomly disseminated throughout the sediments. Gold is always there for a reason. There's usually always structure that's putting it there, or other alterations sort of reasons. And another one that I haven't really talked about in detail at Nelligan is there is a transition between alteration types from a green schist facie to an amphibolite facie, which is basically just the level of metamorphism that takes place in this sort of in the Abitibi region. So all of these are important factors that we have to look at and appear to be controlling the mineralization there. And the other coinciding piece of information is there's a syncline axis which tends to go right through the trend of the mineralization. Now, whether that syncline is specifically related to the mineralization or not, I think reading the disclosure from IM Gold and Vanstar, I think it's still up for debate. But certainly there is a structural control that happens to be hosted within the sediments, that happens to have a transition between two different metamorphic domains. And all of these together make the perfect package for that gold to be deposited at that point. We want to trace that package to the west or west-northwest onto our property, and that's one of our key areas that we'll be testing.
Terrific, guys. Chad, any more on that, or that's good?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's
here's the thing I would just say is it seems as a non-technical person that it's not just those various grades from 30 years ago that might not have excited people, but it really sounds like it's the new sedimentary defined type of deposit that you're going after that they just weren't looking for back then. Is that sort of the case?
The brand new model.
Sorry, but there are multiple targets here. There is the lower grade sediment hosted target, but we are also looking for a more traditional Abitibi lode gold deposits, which are much higher grade, as I've discussed at Fancamp, and as that occurs at Monster Lake and some of the other deposits in the area. So we are targeting both, and they both will have a slightly different signature. So we're keeping our eyes open, and we will be happy to find either or both of those on our property.
Terrific.
Yeah, and that point, just to finish off, I mean, Monster Lake up here is a high grade, it's 12 grams per ton. So this entire area, and you can see right here, this is Fancamp, okay? So this entire area at the upper right is structurally controlled, higher grade, perhaps geologically more complex. And then this whole other area down here, which is, here's Nelligan, okay, which is 1 gram. This whole area could be a sediment hosted. So sediment hosted deposits tend to be the big ones globally, but unfortunately, sometimes they tend to be lower grade. And the more complex ones, like the Abitibi lode ones that Rob just mentioned, they tend to be higher grade. So we're testing both types of gold deposits on our large property pack.
Terrific, guys. That's great color. So a couple of logistical questions. One of them was curious if you've set up a camp on any of these properties for this exploration program.
No, not yet. We're going through logistics right now and sorting out what is going to be best. One of the main things we have to be aware of is the COVID pandemic that's going on, and we want to keep our workers and, you know, just as importantly, the local community as safe as possible. So we're trying to figure out what the best scenario would be.
And, you know, a camp is less important on our property because we can travel every day in the morning and at night back to Chibougamau. And we're about, I don't know, half an hour from the Chibougamau airport, and the airport, maybe that it's even less than half an hour. Let's say 20 minutes to the airport and another 20 minutes into Chibougamau. So it's a very easy commute into the town with all the services, hotels, restaurants, that kind of a thing. So we don't really need a camp here per se, not like in some more remote exploration properties or companies, you know.
Yep. One of the next questions about logistics is: do you see COVID preventing you from getting exploration done on these projects this summer or during the exploration season?
We don't believe so. Like I said, it's certainly a high priority for us to maintain a safe working environment. I know a lot of other companies have already restarted their programs in the area, and we all have to work together and do it as safely as possible. But I believe we can maintain a safe environment and reach our objectives for the exploration program.
Okay. Next question. Sorry, Chad.
Sorry. Yeah, just to add a little bit. So our claims are on the traditional lands of the Cree, and the Cree have you know, a long history of working with exploration companies, working with businesses in general. You know, they're very proactive and business oriented. For example, they own Air Quebec, that kind of a thing, and so they're quite organized, if I could use that term, and they have submitted to all the exploration companies that are active in the area protocols for us to adopt before we go back and start exploration. So we know where we stand with the locals, with the Cree, in terms of what we need to do. And so it eliminates a lot of the guesswork. I would, again, I talked about location, the importance of location many times, but you know, the First Nations here are definitely a lot more knowledgeable and active in exploration than arguably anywhere else in the world. So we're very fortunate in that respect as well.
Okay, just on the logistics front, Chad, you mentioned how convenient it was to Chibougamau, but just a different aspect to the question. Let's say you're very successful here in finding something. What are the logistics in the area to ever potentially attract either majors or bring something into production? Like, just tell us about the logistics for actually mining in this region.
Rob, do you want to jump into that one?
No, I mean, northern Quebec it's a mining country. It's used to putting things in production. We're only a short drive. When I say a short drive, it's probably about, Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, about 4 hours to Val-d'Or, and then down to Montreal and other larger centers, you know,
Quebec City, yeah.
7-8 hours. But this is an area that's comfortable with building and operating mines. There's a lot of available workers in the district, a lot of trained people, and you know, Chibougamau is not a large city, but it certainly will be plenty to allow us to run our exploration program. And if we find something larger, we can then source from nearby centers that are larger and more used to dealing with larger project needs.
Terrific.
Yeah, and this slide on page 6 illustrates. So this Highway 167 that goes to Quebec City, obviously the capital of the province of Quebec. Chibougamau in the top right here. You can see that. So Chibougamau, I think, at one time had 12 active mines with mills. The town of Chapet is a very active logging area. This highway 113 goes to Val-d'Or. And you can see all the roads. There are hundreds of roads. This was a heavily forested area. So this is not pristine forest here. This was heavily, in fact, is still heavily logged. And when we travel on these logging roads, we have to be careful because these massive trucks go by very quickly and they're loaded with huge logs. It's worth noting that Nelligan is an IAMGOLD Vanstar joint venture. So IAMGOLD is a significant gold producer. Further to the west, you know, there's Bachelor Lake, which is a Bonterra property. The point being, you know, this is mining country. It's hard to get more mining focused, mining centric. And to give you an example, our drilling costs, we expect them to be about $100 per meter, which is shockingly low. We've had 4 quotes about that price, which will make our drilling costs very, very low. So the translation is it increases the probability of success because it lowers our costs and it lowers our time. It's all about increasing our odds, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for that. A question about the budget for the exploration season in front of you that you have at this point. Do you lay out the exploration budget and what you're looking to spend?
Yeah, so basically we are, for our first phase program, which will include the stripping, the mapping, the trenching, the sampling, continuing to follow on with targets, that'll be about $225,000 to complete that. Our drilling phase afterwards, we are still fine-tuning that, so we don't have a final budget on that yet.
Okay. Terrific. Next question I have is someone's asking the monthly corporate burn rate.
Yeah, Chad, do you want to answer that, or?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. First of all, we don't have an office yet. We were looking to get one, but obviously because of COVID, so our footprint is very small. You're looking at myself, Rob. We have a geologist, Ed Thoreaus. We have Christina that helps, and obviously Oren is our CFO. So a very small group. other than the board, of course. My guess is that our current burn rate, this does not include exploration, because the moment we start exploring, the spend will increase dramatically. But our, let's call it corporate G&A, is in the order of around 30,000 per month, something like that, 25 to 30,000 per month.
Well, that's a refreshingly low number for a mining company. So that's good. Thank you for that. Someone just asked on the drilling side, are we talking $100 per meter for diamond drilling?
That's right. And that's an all-in cost. It basically includes mob, demob, cost plus, moves, but would not include assays or geologists. That would be on top. Okay.
And just one more related to the summer work. Who's going to do the field work this summer? Is it contractors?
It's going to be a mix. We're still fine tuning the team, so I'll let you know that it will be a mix of geologists.
Okay. So I have a financial question, guys. I know most of this is geology. I have a question. Any financial or milestones required for your options this fiscal year?
What sort of options?
I'm assuming they're suggesting the corporate options. Are there any milestones that work in tandem with them off of any type of success or progress, I guess is what he's asking.
I don't really understand the question. Rob, do you?
No, I mean, if I can interpret that, I mean, any options that have been granted are just standard, typical options, but they're not things that are triggered upon certain success or anything like that.
Okay, that'll suffice.
By the way, it's important to add that in terms of the burn rate, one of the reasons our burn rate is so low is because the government of Quebec has waived all of the land payments in 2020 because of COVID. So our requirements to keep our claims in good standing it's exceedingly low. You can see we have a gray area here, which is we're earning into this area, but other than that, we own 100% free and clear of all these claims with little to no claim payments whatsoever this year. So we've got a very, very lean overhead, or fixed cost, if you will.
Okay.
This year.
So I think that's about all the questions we have. We're almost 50 minutes in. Do you guys want to make any summary comments before we wrap up?
Just from my perspective, it was great to have this opportunity, and once again, I thank the Red Cloud Group for helping us in this regard. Stay tuned. I think we have a really exciting property, and as Chad mentioned, this is one of the best located projects I've seen. It's early stage, but we have all the right ingredients to move this ahead.
That's a great summary, Rob. Thank you again to Red Cloud and Bruce. Thank you very much. This was awesome. Very well done. Very well executed. So wish us luck. We're going to need a little bit of luck. But so far, the gold price is cooperating, and we're very, very anxious to get onto the ground and do some work and generate some news for the shareholders and the investors and the people that have supported us and will be supporting us.
Well, guys, I thought that was a terrific description, and it was our pleasure today. So thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who tuned in. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.